Hi there, I'm Said and today we will continue with the sculpting of our model to finalize it in and then export it to the Substance Painter and try to texturing our model. I hope you enjoy it. Then follow up. Okay. I'm doing only quickly these parts because I think for today it's more interesting to go for Substance Painter and experience a little bit with that. Uh, but before that we need to fix these issues, otherwise it doesn't look good when we go for the baking normal maps and also other textures. Okay, that's fine. I think we can continue with this shape. Okay. Let's add some detail here. There, there. Perfect. I think it's enough for this work. We can continue this shape. Only there is one thing that remains before I forget. We should also do it for this object. Otherwise, it looks totally different than the rest of our scene. Oh, hi Joey. Hi. I'm not used to reading the text, but yeah. Hello, Genesis, and also Sebastian. Nice to see you here. Okay, now I already fulfilled the detail for this object, so I will deactivate dynamic topology and do the last part of our sculpting before going to substance. If you find out that it's not convenient for you to work with the other object, you can always press the slash button on your keyboard to isolate the objects that you would like to work on it. And it makes your work much faster and easier. It's one of the options that's also available in a recent version of Substance Painter, I mean 2021, and it makes our work much faster, more convenient, and less repetitive. Otherwise, you should always try to zoom in, zoom out, and it makes your work much more painful. Add some detail. It's too big. Okay. I think it's good. Yeah. Put away my tablet, the wrong tablet. Save the file. And yeah, it's fine. I already returned to the layout mode in Blender. Now, as I told you last time, we have the high poly model and low poly model. Absolutely, we would like to bake this detail from the high poly model into the low poly one. And for high poly model, we do not need to take care of the UVs, but for the low poly one, because we need to apply the texture on the low poly one, we need to take care of the UVs. First, I will start by auto UV unwrapping in Substance Painter. If you like it, we can continue with that, but if we find out any problem in there, we will change it into the manual UV unwrap. In order to use this object for Substance Painter, I first select everything that I want to export. It's better to do not join the object together. I will let you know what's the reason for it, but just export it as FX. and I call it stylized lantern underline LP. Selected objects and apply transforms. You can also select here the only mesh because you're only exporting the mesh. And you have the file, deactivate it, activate the high poly mesh, select everything. I already added to my quick favorite things the export button, but you can come to the file, export, and press F6. Again, the same thing, instead of LP, just select HP and export it. Perfect. Now we have both assets. I will open the Substance Painter. The version that I'm currently using is 2021, the latest one, and but it's almost the same in last couple of years. You can apply it to any other version that you have. One of the benefits of Substance is it has the free version for the students. If you are working as a student in university or some other institute, maybe 3D game institutes, you can also use Substance for free. But just only for demonstrating the Substance Painter, I will go to the website to first talk about this package. I think 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago, Adobe bought Substance Painter and they tried to add some additional options to it. In general, Substance Painter is an industrial standard tool for texturing. There are lots of options in there that that adds lots of detail to your workflow when you want like to create asset. And it's not only for the people that wants to create very professional asset. Even for the stylized work or even for the indie game development is very useful. The reason is usually number of batches in any game engine is important, and it's important that you reduce the number of textures or material that you're using for your game. In that case, creating one material that contains all of the details that you want for your object is important, and this workflow is much faster when you do it with Substance Painter. The other tools that you can find from the Substance is Substance Designer that for creating procedurally the material, and Substance Alchemist that you can convert your taken photo into the PBR materials. Here we are using the Substance Painter for our texturing because we are not creating the procedural texture for it somehow. But yeah, if you want, you can also use all of them for free if you're a student. Okay, it's the environment of a Substance Painter. The first thing that you see is a collection of materials, and that is inside the shelf and almost empty environment. By pressing File, going to the New, you can start your work, or if you do not have any 3D model, you can start by opening some samples. The most famous one is MitMet. I really suggest to at least a little bit play around with this object to see how does it look like if you, for example, take one object and start to draw something on top of it. Substance is very, very similar to the Photoshop. If you have some knowledge about the Photoshop, like masks and other stuff, you can easily understand what's happening inside the Substance Painter. In addition to the normal things that we have in Photoshop, also we have some physics-based brushes. For example, here it's like the rain, or it's like organic style that you can start painting your mask using this tool. I'm not going into the detail of each one of them, but only to know that, yeah, it's very, very simple to use and very enjoyable if you start working with it. Perfect. I will press New, and here for the template, for most of the common software we have the template, and here I'm using the Unreal Engine template, algorithmic one, and I'm selecting the file that I plan to use. the file that we exported. Put it here, art, stylized lantern, and I will open the low poly version. As I mentioned, we did not unwrap the UV for this object. In this case, I should select auto unwrap, and I will select recompute all because we did not define the seams or UV on land or anything else. Also for margin, a small is enough for in this case, but if you find out any problem, you can increase it. Usually, a small should be the best option here. I will press OK and discard the changes. It will take a short while to unwrap the UV, and you will see the unwrapped version on the right hand side. First of all, let's see what's the problem with our object. It seems that the normal is not fine. I should find out what's the problem with normals here. I will apply all of the modifiers to find out whether it will solve. But the rest we will find after the first bake. Okay, let's go back to the Blender, select the low poly asset. I will apply all, and again export it as a low poly. Here, when you go to the edit project setting, you can re-import your model if there is any problem related to it, to see whether it will be done. Okay, let's me see what's the problem here. Okay, yeah. Clear custom geometry data, clear custom geometry data, clear for it. Let's do it again. Okay, something went wrong. New and yeah, the local one. Okay, let's see whether is there any bug related. I'll just close the Blender and open it again. Maybe there is some exporting bug because I'm using the beta version of Blender. Okay. Okay, yeah, it's working. It seems that there was some bug with exporting of the other one. Now we have our mesh in 3D scene, the unwrapped UV. It's not perfect. We have lots of unused space here that maybe makes a problem also. The layout of the Substance Painter, I made it for myself. I like it like this. The layer part is the most important part for us. It's like for Photoshops, we have layers and mask and we use, and properties of the brush or the layer that we are working on it. We have the shelf that everything from the material to brushes is already in there, and we will use them quite often. The first part that we need, and it makes the substance smart in doing things, is baking the textures from the normal map to the um, cavity and other stuff. In order to do that, you can go to the edit menu and bake mesh maps or Ctrl Shift B. Here you have different maps that you can bake. I do not have the ID map, but maybe I will create to show you how does it work. But for sure, we are not using the thickness for this work because the thickness map is not important for us. Let's also prepare something for the ID map. I will select this object and I will select this mesh, this one, and this. I will go to the vertex paint and select one color, for example, yellow, because the default vertex paint is white, and if you use the paint set vertex color, you can assign a vertex color to that one. Now, also let me apply weighted normal modifier again, Control R modifiers, and if I export them and re-import the object, I should be able to use that map. Let me double check whether the vertex color is assigned. Yeah, perfect. Every time you do unwrapping, you may reach to the different UV, and this time is much more efficient than the previous time. I think it's better at least. Let's go to the edit, bake mesh, and for the ID, I will select to use the vertex color and start to baking. Because the resolution of bake is very low, we can very fast find out what's happening in there. And also the problem of auto UV unwrapping by substance, that yeah, it shows us that we should do it manually ourselves. But if you go here, you can move between different baked maps from the normal map, border space normals, and also that ID that we already baked, like this. Okay, let's go back to the Blender and prepare our UV unwrapping. First, for this object, I will go to the UV editing. And yeah, I think we do not need very special seams. I'm just doing a very quick seam. Maybe it's not the best unwrap ever, but yeah, it will work for us. One of the things that can help you, you can go to the into the active tool and workspace setting, activate the live unwrap, and from this menu also select the UV sync selection. In that way, when you do the seams, you will see also the results on the real time. If you press Ctrl and select the next edge, it will try to find the quickest path between your selection, and that way you can easily select the path that you need. Make a seam, and you see here the shape. One of the ways to check whether your unwrap is good or not is to activate from the menu, from the UV editing part, the area display stretch, and if you reach to somehow near the bluish color, it would be good for your work, and it's somehow a good unwrap. I will mark the seam. You see the color is getting more bluish, and it shows that our UV is getting better and better. For example, we do not need this face because usually we put this object on the ground. We remove any face that we do not need. And first, I will try to. And you see we only have some small problems here. that I hope to be able to fix it quick. Yeah. Usually try to put the seams on a place that is not very visible or do not makes any problem if you see them. Okay. Let's see where is the location of that part. Let's add another seam also here. Yeah, I think it's enough for this object. We will go for the next one. This one should be somewhat simpler. Select this part, just forget to activate this. Yeah, it's like that again. See. Okay, we had lots of duplicated vertices. Reduce this to avoid any problem. Okay, now we have totally blue unwrap. The next one would be this object. Usually when you have totally separated parts, make them as a seam and then try to add seam for the rest of your object. Yeah, seams is like the place that you can cut your UV, and it will help the tool to understand how to maybe cut the texture from the 2D, put the texture from the 2D space into the 3D object. Sometimes time consuming. There are some tools for make more automated workflow, but none of them is working perfectly. Even the industrial standard tool like Substance Painter did not do the great job in this case. I will select this. This. This, and then I will deselect the middle lines or edges. Press C. Yeah, to make them separated. I think we can even distinguish between the middle points, but I think for now it should be enough. Let's do that. For these two objects, it's very because they are not very significant. I just used a smart UV unwrap because it's not important for us. For this object, I will make this face and this face. No, sorry, this face and this one is a seam, and then from this area. There. I think it's enough for this object. This object, it already had UV because it's simple sphere. This, I think we have already everything. After you finish that, just select all of your object, go to the UV, average, island, scale. It will average the scale of all of your object. You see, for example, for something like this object that I know it's related um, to this hanging part that is very small, but we have very big UV. It means that we forget to apply the scale to this object. When you apply it and go to the UV and average island the scale, you will get correct value for them. After that, you can go again to the UV and pack your islands. In the packing means putting everything in one UV space, all of the UVs. But it's not the perfect solution. There are some paid solution, but also there is a UV packer that sometimes can provide a better solution for you. For example, I will pack again, and now I'm somehow using 65% of the whole space for the UVs, and I think it's a good value. Now I will export again everything into the low poly version and Substance Painter, edit project configuration, select low poly, and I will deactivate auto unwrap because I already unwrapped it, and preserve stroke because I changed the scale, and press OK. And you see we have already exactly the same unwrap that we had in Blender. I will bake quickly with a very low resolution again to see how does it look like. And you can see that, yeah, now we have the clear shape without any problems that we had before. Now I will increase the resolution to 4K and also the subsampling to 4.4, it's 4x4. I think it's a value that I usually use. The other things that we need, we would like to bake from the high definition model to the low definition model. In that way, I will select the high poly one and accept the ID map because I will bake the rest. Now, if you take a look at our object, you will see that the detail that we already sculpted into the high poly version, it's baking into the low poly one. One of the interesting points is one of the interesting maps that we usually use is ambient occlusion that gives a very nice feeling to our model, as well as the curvature that for the metallic object is very useful. It will take a little bit time because we use high resolution for texture baking option. But in short, but we can continue. If there is any question related to the procedure that we had, please ask in the meanwhile that we can discuss about it. Otherwise, yeah, we will go through the process. Oh, really? Yeah, it's reasonable. Perfect. Is it better now? Can you hear me clear? Or is there any problem? By the way, I will continue. I hope everything is clear, but yeah, perfect. Yeah. Now I will bake only the ID map. And already selected the vertex color. I will use low poly mesh as a high poly mesh here, and bake again, only for the ID part. The reason to use the ID map is mainly showing you how does it work, but we can use it as a mask for our work. Okay, I do not need the 2D view for this work. You can change it either using this menu or pressing F2 and F1 to switch between the views. I will go to the 3D view and start making our material. The first material that I would like to make is a wood, and this wood is stylized and non-realistic. It means we mainly work with color. In that case, I will create a folder, call it wood, and inside this folder I will create one fill layer. The meaning of the fill layer in Substance Painter, let's make it main color, and for main wood, let's make main color. The meaning of the fill layer is the layer that everything that you assign from the color, metallicness, roughness, normal map, or height is assigned to the whole body. And for the color, I will select something. Let's increase the saturation to see. I will select something, yeah, woodish. Some sort of this color, I think it would be fine. Yeah, perfect. But it's already assigned to the everywhere. We will change it later on, maybe, because I'm not so satisfied. This color is better. But it's assigned to the everywhere, and we would like to define where to assign this. In order to do that, one of the new features in Substance Painter is the geometry selection. I will go to the folder that we create, select it, and exclude all. It means nothing will have that material. And here I will select this part will have a wooden part, this part, and this, and the rest will not take any effect from the wood. But even in this part of our model, we have some additional geometry that do not need the wood material. In order to do that, I will right-click on my layer or my folder and pressing the mask button and add black mask. But if you are familiar in Photoshop with the masks, black mask means that the part that is black is not taking any effect of this layer, and everywhere that is white will take effect. It means if you pick your paintbrush and start painting, everywhere that you paint will take the influence of that layer. But absolutely painting is not our option in this case. When I selected this layer, I will right click on it and add a paint layer, or I can come here and add a paint layer. This paint layer is assigned to the mask. We can also assign the paint layer to the main color or the main folder information. From this paint layer, I will come to the left part of the screen and select the polygon fill. Using the polygon fill, I can select exactly which mesh part of our model will take the wood material. I can easily drag and select every part that I need the wood material. Okay, yeah, it's good. It's good, and then this part. If you are not, it's not easy for you to work in 3D view, with F5 and F6 you can move between the 3D and 2D views. Always working in 2D view is more precise. Perfect. Now we already assign the parts that we need to apply the wood material to it. Let's return to our folder to do the rest. Again, I'm not so satisfied with the color that we select. We need maybe more red into it and less saturated, or the saturation may be good. As I mentioned, one of the smart parts of the Substance Painter is you already have the ambient occlusion map, and you can add this data to your model. I will duplicate this layer by pressing Ctrl D or Ctrl C, Ctrl V. Ctrl D is the easy shortcut for do that, and I will call this layer ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is a part that is darker. In this way, I will make it a little bit darker and maybe less saturated. But it's applied to everywhere. How we can solve it is by assigning another black mask to avoid applying that part, and add one generator to this black mask. The generator should be ambient occlusion generator. Every mask that you are working with them, from the menu you can go to see the mask, and you see this mask is something like this. The white part means the mask will be applied, the material will be applied, and the dark part will not apply. First of all, I will work a little bit with the parameters. For example, I reduce the balance to have more darkened part and more distinction between the white and dark part, and also increase the contrast between them. You can see I have more detail now. If you find out it's useful, also increase the blur a little bit. I will return to the material, and I can see that it's exactly in a reverse wise that I want. Everywhere is dark unless the points that is occluded by ambient. I would like to have the inverted one, and we have the option for global inverse. And you can see now we have our material with that ambient occlusion as a detail added to our model. The next point is we have some maybe carved area that we would like to add another additional detail to them. These areas can be accessed usually either using cavity map or the ambient occlusion map. I will create first another layer duplicated from this one. I will call it maybe curvature or edge. I will add a black mask to it, but yeah, before adding the black mask, let's fix the color. The color should be less saturated, a little bit brighter. Okay, and maybe even we can change the color a little bit. Yeah, something like this. Now I will add another black mask to it, and inside the generator I will add generator, and inside it I will select the curvature. If I again go to the mask, you can see which area this mask is applied. It's to the border. There are several parameters for the curvature. I will deactivate all of them first to see the influence of each part. And for now we have totally black part. I increase it. I can see that the detail is happening in my model. There are two main options, the edges and cavities. Cavities is the inside parts, and the edge is outside part that has the curvature. For this one, I will select only the cavities, a little bit increase this. I think it's enough. I will return back to the model. And if you want to see the difference by activating and deactivating it, you see that you have much more detail into your model. Currently I'm working in 2K resolution. If you want to see them more, you can always change here to the 4K one to see the more detail, but for now I think the 2K is enough. We can export it always with the 4K resolution at the end. I will duplicate this edge and call it cavity. change the color to the more yellowish one, orange. Something like this. Yeah, a little bit more red. Yeah, and this time instead of the part with curvature, I will with the instead of edge, I will use the uh, cavity parts. Now I can color the inside part of our detail. I would like to have the more detail here. I do not want that part. Mainly this part. And then global blur. Okay. Yeah, I think it's good. Let's go back to the material. And I will use the overlay. No, it's normal one, but only with reduced influence. Using this technique, you're already adding lots of more information to your model without adding additional data or data. Yeah, something like this. It's too much even, but yeah, I think it's good. The other things that you can add, but it depends on you whether you like. For example, I can duplicate this ambient occlusion map, change the color to a little bit less saturated one, to a little bit brighter saturated. Yeah, and then instead of the ambient occlusion, this time I will remove this and add another generator and call it position. I will make it a little bit greenish. The position can apply mask according to the location of our object. For example, now the top part is white, it means the mask is applied, and the bottom part is dark. But I would like to have the reverse bias. First of all, yeah, I need this. I think this part is good, and I need to only invert the mask and then play with the parameters. Reduce it to this part, not blur, but yeah, yeah, I think it would be cool. Use that, then balance. Now if I return to the material, I have a little bit greenish color. If your area is already, your ground is already grass or similar thing, you can apply it. The other solution, only to know if, for example, instead of the green color, I will use a little bit yellowish green. I will deactivate that one. And instead of this mask, I will use the mask that is provided by Substance itself. If you go to the smart masks, you can see the list of masks. There are lots of interesting ones. For example, if you select the dirt ground, you will have lots of information into your model suddenly only with this effect. And for example, after that, I can add another filter and activate the blur, increase the blur if you want to have the stylized one. And then if I reduce the influence of this layer, you can have some additional information into your model easily. There are lots of a mask and detail that you can use. Okay, I think for the wood is enough. I will duplicate this. No, sorry, not duplicate. I will create another folder and call it metal. For the metal part, we need to take care of first, in order to be sure that which part I'm selecting as a metal. First, I will apply the red channel to it, and then I will start to assigning our metal material. First, I know that metal will be only these two parts, also this and this, and then I will invert it. And I will apply a black mask, adding a paint layer, and do the same workflow as we did for the wood. For example, I will select all of that part, all of this part, and if you select something that you do not want, you can change the color from white to black or press X, similar to Photoshop, to deselect that part that you already selected. Never worry about selecting something wrong. There is mainly ways to solve your mistake. Okay. And now I remember that I just realized that I forget to assign for this part. Again, I will come here and assign it. I think that's good. Always check your model from different sides in case that you forget to assign the mask in the correct way. But it seems to be correct. Name metal. Absolutely, our metal is not red. It should be mainly white, but I prefer to have a little bit bluish color into it. In that way, first I select the blue, then reduce the saturation to exactly reach to the point that I want. It should be almost fully metallic, and then the roughness. This is somehow carved metal, and the roughness should not be very low. Okay, it's the first part of our metal. It's totally distinguishable from our wood, but I realized that for our wood, the roughness is very low. We need much higher roughness, for example, 0.6. And unfortunately, it should apply it to all of them. However, I can also create another layer and apply to that layer, but here I prefer to have a little bit distinction between the roughness. I reduce the roughness on edges and increase the roughness on the occluded parts, and also a little bit less roughness on this part. I think it's good. Just this one is not ambient occlusion, it's grass. This detail. Perfect. And ambient occlusion, you can also, sorry, not override, make it as a multiply if you like, but for our case, I think normal will work. The next point about our metal is we would like to add again that ambient occlusion similar to what we add for the wood. And yeah, just make it a little bit more colorful and more dark. Only to repeat our procedure, I add it and then add generator, ambient occlusion, invert it, uh, decrease the balance, increase the contrast. Yeah, it should be cool. I will keep it simple like this. Duplicate it, removing the mask, and exclude all, and just select this object. And I call it gold. It should be the same material somehow, but with a more yellowish color. Yeah. And the point is here the roughness is very low and it's much more metallic. To create the gold, and for the ambient occlusion part, I will select the same but darker detail. I would like to add also another detail here concerning the lightning part, the middle part, to be able to turn it on inside the game. In order to do that, if you remember, I already applied the vertex color to this object. If I add a black mask to this and and here I can add a color selection, and I can select the rest of the object. In this way, I can easily distinguish between the parts that I would like to illuminate them later and the parts that will not, yeah, that is not emissive. I create another folder, called it emission or emissive, and I will add a fill layer. Emission. I will only select this part and apply, add a black mask, apply color selection, pick color, and this. Absolutely. If you take a look at the data that we have for this object, there is no emission data, but we have the color and yeah, the rest. And it's not what we want. I will increase the roughness, but it's not important that much. In order to add the emission, I will go to the texture set setting, and here inside the channels I can add another channel for the emissive or emission. If you add that, you will have the information about the emission on your properties field. You can select it and set the emission to the color that you want. And you can see it has this emission. But for now, I will keep it totally white. There is a reason for it, because I would like to later on inside the game engine to take care of the color of the emission and give the game level designer the possibility to define the color of the emissive part. For now, for this part, I will keep it simple like this. And I'm not going into the more detail of Substance Painter. You can always play more with the tools and brushes and add more detail. For example, if you would like to have some additional information on your object, like what we add for the edges, you can always come here, add a paint layer, choose one of the brushes. Like for example, I choose this dirt brush and start manually painting. That's the procedure that many people suggest when you're doing the stylized workflow. but I kept it simple for this work. But just feel free to test it yourself. It would be very fun and interesting to use. I will remove this layer that I added. And I think for this lecture is enough. You're already over time. I will try to export this asset. First of all, you can export the mesh and apply the triangulation. Here I will say stylized lantern 2v4. I exported the mesh. It's a good it's a good habit to always export also the mesh from the Substance Painter, and then go to the export textures. Inside the export textures, you can define the template that you would like to use. I will use the Unreal Engine 4 template, and you can define the path. I'm going to the where I was working and define texture folder. Go to it. If you go to the material part, the name of the material I did not specify directly. It's a default material, but I can select the resolution by manually modifying the original resolution, and I can check which channels is exporting. I have the base color, occlusion, roughness, metallic channel, a normal texture, and also emissive texture. And then I can press export. Substance will recalculate your texture according to the new resolution that you defined. And if you press open output directory, you can see the textures. As a last part of this lecture, I will also apply them inside the Blender to see how does they feel and look. If you go to the shading, I will activate the ambient occlusion to have at least a little bit ambient occlusion. And I will create a new material. Here I will go to the art, stylized lantern texture, and I will import these textures. All of the textures. The first one is the base color that I will connect, and after you connecting it, sorry. You can see the influence of your base color, but I should just press Ctrl L and apply the material to all of the objects that we have. I will also activate the word opacity to only see our model. The next point is when you use the Unreal template, the base color is default from the occluded version. If you want to add it, you need to add here the RGB mix RGB and use the multiply, and if I'm right, there should be a split. RGB. I will use separate RGB. And now, as the name of them says, it's you can also check it here: occlusion, roughness, metallic. The first channel, that is the red channel, is occlusion channel. If you use them together and use also as a multiply, you have the texture with the ambient occlusion influence, and you can control the amount of the influence of this ambient occlusion inside the either Blender or the game engine later. The next channel is the roughness that you can connect to the roughness, and the next one is metallic. Okay, somehow we are reaching to the shape that we want. Normal map is a non-color data because it's a vector, it's not a color. And you can, if you want to use it, you should create a vector normal map and then connect it to this part like this. And you now have the normal map detail. If you find out that the roughness is, for example, is not the value that you expect from it, it's totally reasonable. You can just, for example, create I think there is a level, or you can also use the multiply node, mask node, and then now if you play with this value, you can control the amount of roughness that you expect. And the last point is the emission, that we can directly connect it to the emission part. And for the emission range, before that I activate the bloom to have the emission, and then for the emission range we can define the amount of emission that we want. As you remember, I told you if you use the white emission, then afterward you can also define, for example, you can again define the color that you want for it. I will create another mix RGB, and here I will select again the multiply. Where is it? If I connect it, and for this color, for now I will select only white, but after that, if I change the color and reduce the emission, I can have a different emissive color. However, in that case, I should also apply it to the normal color, because in Blender it seems it's showing too much emission, and I'm not going to modify that. But in general, you can also apply it to that part of your map if you like, for more color emissive parts. Okay, I think it's enough for this lecture. If there is any other question, just ask me. Otherwise, we will finish for today and continue the next time.